Welcome to the Barry Podcast, an unofficial show covering the official show on HBO, Barry. I'm one of your hosts, Jamie G, Esquire the Fifth, and I know the difference between a soft no and a hard no. I'm here with my co-host, Magnum Mills, to talk about the 10th episode of Barry titled The Power of No.
I mean, if you don't know, now you know. You have a hard 5, a loose 15, the power of no, the power of love. I'm Magnum Mills, and I am powered probably by mostly Coors Light and bullshit, but thank you for checking out the Barry Podcast, powered by all the platforms where you get your podcasts. We're on all of them, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google, wherever you get them. We're there. We're on social media at Barry Podcast. You can search for us on YouTube or find our YouTube channel at JoBloFootballShow.com. If you could, please take like 8.5 to 10 seconds to comment, rate, like, follow, subscribe. All you have to do is one of those things. If you want to do them all, you're a god. But just one will only take you a few seconds, and it helps us out a lot because it helps other people find the show. We greatly appreciate it. Please, thank you, and the very much.
All of them. And having a solid spoiler policy is just as important as having a good spaghetti policy. During our discussion, we will be spoiling all the events of this episode titled The Power of No, as well as all previous episodes of Barry up to this point. However, we will not be spoiling any future events or episodes. At the end of this episode discussion, though, we will have a little spoiler section, but rest assured, we'll give you plenty of heads up so you can bail if you don't want to hear those spoilers. Mills, give us those episode deets, those sweet, sweet deets.
Starting now. This is Season 2, Episode 2, The Power of No, originally aired Sunday, April 7th, 2019, with an estimated 424,000 viewers in the United States tuning in live. This is directed by Hiro Murai. This is the 4th episode of Barry that he directed. He also directed the Season 2 premiere. Written by Alec Bird and Bill Hader, with Teofik Kolade credited as an executive story editor. Again, same setup as we had in episode 1 of season 2. The short plot synopsis is: facing pressure from NoHo Hank, Barry struggles to pull off an important hit. After asking the class to mine their own personal traumas for an original piece, Gene decides to confront his own past.
And before we get into our recap discussion of this episode, we'll hit you with some overall thoughts here. Remember, no future spoilers. Mills, this one had some moments, buddy. This had some moments. I'm curious to get your take on this.
Again, I think it felt that this was a little bit of a continuation of the first episode of the season. Nothing wrong with that, but almost more like it was a two-parter that maybe could have been one slightly too long episode that got split up into two with a little bit of filler. Definitely some high points here, things that I love, but I think it did drag just a little bit. Like, the best episodes of Barry really move. I do like when they let us kind of get that introspection and some of that darkness in. And again, there has never been a bad episode of Barry, in my opinion. I would just say this is kind of like, more towards the middle of road than a top tier episode. Any other thoughts?
Yeah, no, I totally agree with that. You kind of, it's interesting to say, okay, from a writing standpoint, could they have unpacked all the events that happened in the season finale of season 1 into one episode? I think the answer is clearly no. They're still kind of developing that and figuring it out. Not that it's a bad thing, but I think it needs to be noted. So totally agree. Huey Lewis and the news showed us the power of love. Now it's up to you to show us the power of no.
As the episode opens, Barry is daydreaming about his first kill in the military when NoHo Hank snaps him out of it. They're outside of the monastery used by the Burmese mafia. Hank wants Barry to shoot Esther in the head with the bullet his family mailed to him. Barry tells Hank that's not how bullets work. Hank makes him take the bullet anyway, and Barry asks Hank if he thinks that he is evil. Of course Hank thinks Barry is evil. Does he not tell him that enough? JVG, does Hank not tell Barry that enough?
Apparently he doesn't. And I just love Hank's response to this. His face, it's like, it would be like somebody being like, I'm sorry I don't tell you I love you enough. Of course I love you. You're a mate. It was great, dude. It just, never change, Hank.
Basically, this is just, again, another scene for Anthony Corrigan as Hank to just kind of go off. I guess the only thing is he really doesn't know how bullets work. Like, I'm pretty sure that bullet would be in the middle of someone's skull, and I do not know that extraction would be that easy. But why would Barry not just be like, okay, then shoot someone with the other bullet and then just like rub the bullet on the blood? Like, would that just be the way? Would you actually to kill them with that bullet? Like, who would really know? Like, ballistics, the bullet's going to get pushed up and it's not even going to look like a good bullet anymore. Other than that, though, everything else is great. Ground control to Major Barry. And I mean, Esther, I wouldn't call it watermelon size. She does have a big head, and that's a head on a hat.
It's got its own solar system.
Yeah, and if you want your Yoshinoya beef bowl, you got to go out to like California because it's a Japanese grill with many locations in the LA area. But you're probably going to be asked out if you're on the East Coast. After the title card, we're at the LAPD where Loach is creeping on his ex-wife's Facebook page. Maydun arrives and she's ready for their trip to Cleveland to question Fuchs. Loach tells her that this is personal for him and he's going alone.
Thoughts on this with Loach? Like, he definitely, I like Loach as a character because there's been times where it's been like total joke, but then there's also times where it's like, this is a dude who like is somewhat serious here. I don't know. It's interesting. You can kind of play both sides.
He really is trying to do the Mac thing where he's playing both sides, or at least the writers are with him. I don't really kind of know what to say other than I think it's almost like kind of cute. Like he's like, a puppy dog to Janice Moss that she, kind of like, I don't think she disliked Loach, but she kind of viewed him as like a whatever. But he has just kind of like dedicated his life. Maybe it's because of his divorce, but to kind of, following the cause of Janice. So, I don't know. Very cool. But again, you get the cool thing with Loach's office, not really being in office. So it reminds you that Loach is like, he's not like a detective who's worthy of his own office or whatever. He's right there in the bullpen with everyone else. And I have to say, when May asks him, like, is that all you're taking? Did your wife take all the luggage? That directly reminded me of True Lies.
She even took the ice cube trays out of the freezer. What kind of a sick bitch takes the ice cube trays out of the freezer?
Well, in this case, she even took the luggage.
Yeah, and just I'm not sure if it's a real thing, but I think there is a chance that people aren't legally allowed to travel to Cleveland by themselves. There might be a mandatory buddy system. I haven't checked it out, so I'm just saying it might be a thing, might not be. After that, Barry arrives at the acting class, and there's already a performance going on. Sally quietly explains to him that Barry's performance in the previous class had inspired the students to share their own pain. It's like competitive grief. They're currently reenacting the death of Natalie's twin while she was still in utero. Next up is Antonio. Apparently his career as a professional soccer player ended because of hot sauce. He spilled some on his leg and he was attacked by a pit bull, which severed his Achilles tendon. Then we see Eric being told about his parents divorcing. Gene addresses the class and tells them the new plan. They're all going to do scenes about their own pain, which they will turn into a show. Barry will tell his story, and everyone else will find their own sheepfucker moments. Everybody except Barry seems pretty pumped about this. Sally passes on sharing her truth to attend a meeting at Gersh where they prepared her reel for her to view. Gene seems a bit exasperated here, and he tells the students to take a loose 15. Is that code for a poop?
It sounds it. I mean, that's about how long you need.
Yeah, it's either a hard 5 or a loose 15, I guess. Maybe that's how it works. And
it's not exactly a tight 15. I'll tell you that, dude. I got to give it up for Antonio here. This was probably my favorite of the bunch, man.
That was pretty. I mean, because that's supposed to be real, right? The idea that he was a professional soccer player who lost his, livelihood due to hot sauce. I'd love to know the alts they had in the writing room. And obviously,
all right, I know you were just a fetus, but is this close to your experience?
From what I remember.
Jamie G, how much do you remember from when you were a fetus?
Yeah.
How much do you remember from when you were 5?
Like 3 things. Like, yeah, it's you don't. I
being
don't
very bad at writing my name. That's mostly what I remember about that. But yeah, it kind of, everything gets a little meta here, especially right down to the end when Gene says,
what if we made it about ourselves for a change?
I mean, the whole class has been about these people making it about themselves. So that's like a hat on top of a hat, but in a good way. Yeah. That's a super meta. Just, everything about that great. And, they're all going to find their sheepfucker moments eventually, I'm sure. I don't even know. Maybe it kind of goes back to when Gene did the like, thank you for your service joint, but all the students being jealous at Barry for being in a war seems kind of fucked up.
He was in a war.
So lucky.
Yes, Barry was blessed with being able to witness the atrocities of war, absolutely. I bet you all wish you were down in the shit with him.
That's kind of fucked up. And then we get
Yeah.
a little thing with Natalie, you know, how she's always kind of parroting Sally a little bit. Sally touches Barry on the shoulder to like reassure him. And then like 3 seconds later, Natalie does the same thing. And Barry turns around and gives her this weird ass look. Just a very kind of small but interesting moment. And during the loose 15, Gene is reminiscing in his office when Barry stops by. Barry doesn't want to do the scene of him in Afghanistan, but Gene insists that he does. Despite Gene's insistence, Barry finds a loophole by suggesting that he'll do a scene about meeting Gene instead. Gene can't help himself, and he tells Barry that he'll allow it. He's also got additional materials if Barry needs them, including a lot of tapes. He's going to send Natalie to the storage unit.
How great is it? Like, I don't know what else could he have had other than tapes, right? I mean, maybe the shit that came before tapes, but like the 8mm shit, but like,
Yeah, sex tape on like film, like,
yeah, like actual film, but like all I could think of is like Gene definitely has a full box of like tapes in his garage somewhere in the storage unit.
Let's be honest, from a strategic standpoint, this is probably the smartest move Barry's ever made, right? He just needs to play to Gene's ego here to get him out of it.
Yeah.
Like he usually isn't that smart. Like that's what Fuchs was for, kind of. And shout out the Dennehy balloon.
Actually, it's a colostomy bag filled with blood that Brian Dennehy used during Death Trap. When he was shot, he would...
Just the fake squeezing is, you know, so great. And you see the note from Gene to himself here, Janice the cabin on Friday, buy flowers, not yellow. And then you see Gene look at a picture of his kid, which I'm pretty sure is the first time we actually find out that Gene has a kid. You know, definitely a lot going on here. And even right when Barry walks out, you see that right there, Gene has an old school like VCR TV cart combo like you would see in junior high back in the days. You know, it definitely backs up the fact that he has tapes. Also, giant first aid kit on the wall. You get a feeling they've probably needed to use that before at the acting class. We move from the acting class to Gersh, and we see Sally get to watch her reel. Assuming that we saw the whole thing, it only takes about a minute. Sally's agents ask how she's doing, and she thanks them profusely and says she's doing great. They're sorry to keep it brief, but they have to go. The two men, Mike and Michael, leave, and the third agent named Lindsay stays behind to talk to Sally. She can tell that Sally didn't like the reel, and Sally tells her that she feels that she has more to offer than just breakfast. I mean, shout out Waffle House. They have more than breakfast. Nothing wrong with Waffle House. I'd be the acting version of
Well,
Waffle
they're
House.
covered all day.
Absolutely. But Lindsay loves the little breakfast reference there, and she encourages Sally to hang in there. If she just plays the game, better parts will come her way. Thoughts on Sally's acting reel? Because I think that was a fun one. I mean, we kind of like, she'd been hyped up a little bit, right? All these parts she was booking. Were you expecting a little bit more, maybe?
I actually found it to be kind of sad, where I actually for a split second kind of felt bad for her. And maybe that's the point. But yeah, I expected this to be a little bit more robust and actually feature some of her talents, you know, and it was really just kind of this hodgepodge. And I think it was actually made to kind of, you know, again, kind of a hidden layer of making fun of the whole thing, kind of.
Yeah, I mean, the parts were absolutely ridiculous, but like, you get the idea, like the one where it was like the lead prosecutors and they were all chicks. Like one of them was going to be Sally because he had the blonde hair from like the review. She turns around, it's not Sally, and then Sally's just a secretary or whatever.
Exactly.
And, you know, some notable guest stars here. Shout out Patrick Fabian. He's famously Howard Hamlin on Better Call Saul, which we've covered on Saul over soon. You should watch it if you haven't. Breaking Bad prequel. And Michael Beach, he's the cop who's like Sally's partner or whatever. It's one of the things that Barry's does very well is that even if it's a real small part, they tend to get these great character actors. So the show always feels like really populated. And I think that's especially important when you're doing satire of Hollywood to have someone who's actually kind of like a known actor instead of a no name. I think it gives it a little more gravitas, so to speak. After that, Fuchs is released from jail, but he finds Loach waiting for him. He tries to go back into jail, but no luck. Loach asks Fuchs why his tooth was found in Goran Pizarro's garage, and Fuchs blames a foreign prostitute. Who knows what they do? Loach doesn't believe him, but like Fuchs, he really doesn't give a fuck about Pizarro either. He shows Fuchs a picture of Barry multiple times, and Fuchs denies knowing him. Loach explains that he thinks Barry had something to do with the death of his partner, Janice Moss. If Fuchs had anything to do with that, he's going to prison. Dude, Fuchs' story here, like, is it so stupid that it's brilliant? Like, what idiot would tell that? That's the only thing I could think of is, like, it's so dumb that...
It has to be true, right? It has to be true because it's so ridiculous. Like
she just stole it out of my mouth. Like, not even like the idea that, like, he should have had a grill or something, right? Like, I had a gold tooth there. I don't know.
But it just creates just a hairline of enough doubt to be like, maybe, but it's like
maybe if he fucked the tooth fairy. I mean, I don't know. Was the foreign prostitute, was that her nickname, the tooth fairy? That was part of her payment?
Maybe things got freaky, dude. I mean, who knows? Maybe Fuchs likes it rough. As long as it's legal and consensual, we try not to kink shame here on the Barry podcast.
It's kind of funny that now they can tell that because it's a DNA thing and they get it from like the core of the tooth, where back in the day, maybe he would have got away with dental records. Because remember Ruslan's brother there, Vacha, like filed his teeth down. Yeah, it's kind of cool that they did bring that tooth back around though, because like it's almost Barry's fault because he punches Fuchs in the face, which loosens it up, and then Goran's guy finishes it. So it's almost like Barry brought it upon himself a little bit. The idea that Fuchs thought that the prostitute might have taken it to like grind it up and use it in a potion. I think Fuchs is saying that his teeth are a little bit Fuchs fly or what have you. Not the Spanish fly; it's a Fuchs fly, a little bit of aphrodisiac.
Definitely a little Spanish fly. I thought it was hilarious. Fuchs just tries to immediately go back into jail. I mean, just you gotta love this guy, dude.
And also the idea that when Fuchs talking about where the prostitute came from, it's like, oh, it must have been on a route or something. Like, dude, the idea, like, prostitutes have routes like they're fucking like their mail carrier. I just thought that concept was just absolutely hysterical. Like, oh yeah, she's just out in a route today.
Yeah, she's got a heavy load.
She runs a little late on Tuesday and Thursday, but she'll be around soon. After that, Barry arrives at the apartment where he's now roommates with Nick and Jermaine. Jermaine doesn't have as many good lines as the last episode here, but he also doesn't have that money for what, the groceries Barry just bought on him either. Barry goes into his bedroom and he puts the bullet from Hank into a clip hidden in his box ring, replaces it all, hides all the shit. I think this is the first time we figure out where Barry's living or whatever. You think he's kind of like low on cash here and that's why he has roommates? I would think maybe, but then on the other hand, he's the one buying all the groceries, and he's got an actual day job. I mean, I don't know, man. Like, do you think he's living here by choice or by necessity?
I think he doesn't necessarily want to be alone. And so I think that's kind of where he just kind of falls in. Also, I will say that they've done this several times. Doesn't it just feel like that clip is gonna pop out the bullet? Doesn't it feel like it's gonna show back up somehow, some way? They've done that with this show so many times where they highlight one thing and then it ends up, I mean, shit, dude, the tooth, and it ends up kind of working its way back. So this just kind of felt like one of those moments.
Yeah, it's basically Chekhov's gun, but it's Chekhov's tooth, and here it's Chekhov's bullet. You have to figure it's going to come back around at some point. But I have to say, as someone, in college, like, even post-college, had some roommates. When your roommate says, "Can I get you tomorrow?" That's basically code for like, "Thank you for buying this for me, but you're probably never going to see that money."
Yeah, there is no getting you tomorrow. It's
especially for something that's like $5 or less. Like, oh, what do you mean? You want? What do you mean? Why do you want that? It's only like $4. Well, motherfucker, if you do that like every week, that's like $20 a month. That's like, it adds up. Then all of a sudden you're kicking off, over $100 a year on your, buying sodas or whatever.
Spoken like a man with a little experience there.
Yeah, because that's how they nickel and dime you, man, just like they would at an open air market. But this is the Italian market in Philly, so there is no bartering. But there are some nice organic fruit stands and whatnot. And we see that Gene has dropped by here unexpectedly to see his son Leo, who runs an organic fruit stand there. Gene tells Leo that the loss of Janice inspired him to reach out because he wants to have a relationship with his son. Gene tries to talk to him, but Leo gets frustrated when Gene mentions his acting students. Leo doesn't care about them, and quite honestly, he doesn't think that Gene cares about them either. Leo doesn't have a relationship with his father, and he's fine with that. I don't know, man, first time we meet, Gene's son, what do you think for the kind of introduction here? A little harsh or seems about right?
A bit harsh, but it's also kind of one of those things where, like, Wow, okay, this is a huge development in Gene, because remember episode 1, they had Gene in the Escalade and with the nice watch, and like he seemed like this big, huge, like massive success. You're starting to kind of see the real Gene here. And I think that's important as they continue to develop his character.
Yeah, the real Gene is maybe not a man of many talents, but a man of many pockets on his suit. And I definitely loved the idea that when Gene kind of tells him, basically gives the audience the short kind of hand answer about how this going to be, when he says,
Were you planned?
no.
But then there you were. So I did what every great actor does. I improvised, left. Look, you want to leave them wanting more, not less.
And I have to say, you want to leave them wanting more, not less, is not a viable parenting strategy. But if it was, it would be called the Costanza method, right?
It would have to be called the Costanza method. And George probably would have been better off if his parents left in a weird way.
I don't know that I could, I'd be more on the can't stand you side than the Costanza side. But Festivus is something for the rest of us. But Leo does get a cutting line here.
I don't care about your students, and neither do you. That whole theater is just a big shrine to you. Even this is about you.
He even says it himself. Gene isn't there because he naturally wanted to reach out to his son. It's because he lost Janice and now he's kind of grasping for something. So I'd have to say I'm probably on Team Leo here.
He's right. And he also has probably gone through enough therapy in his life, and I'm happy for that, to be able to actually tell his parent that. Harder to do than you think. And so shout out Leo.
Yeah, I mean, he doesn't have to be Leo DiCaprio. He's just Leo, the organic fruit guy, and that's good enough. And he kind of messes Gene up a little bit because he goes back to his theater and he's kind of wandering the halls, looking at his old posters. He comes upon Barry rehearsing his scene with Antonio, who's playing Gene. Unfortunately for Barry, Gene is not impressed, and he tells Barry that he's doing the scene from Afghanistan. Antonio actually agrees with Gene. On stage, instead of giving her truth, Sally is basically giving the play-by-play from her meeting with Gersh. She wants to play stronger women, and Gene wonders why she can't bring her truth to the role of a weaker woman. She eventually starts talking about the abuse that she suffered in her marriage and her move to LA. Gene suggests maybe that should be her story. Was this like brilliant teaching by Gene, or did he just gotta let her, draw her own rope, so to speak, or what have you?
I think he did. And I think it's because maybe he doesn't necessarily care, but he knows these students. Again, it just kind of felt like he's been working with these students for years, and he knows them. And he also knows how to bring out and develop them, and he's shown that. I mean, for better or worse, Gene may be a lot of things, but he's actually pretty decent at what he does as their theater coach.
I'd buy that, or at least he, like you said, he has a lot of experience with this, although I guess he does okay with Barry without a lot of experience. I think maybe it would have been a little more interesting. Like, I don't think we've seen anyone new coming into the acting class. I guess I should say something, that in this whole time that no one new has joined the class. It's all kind of these same people. Maybe they're kind of worshiping at the cult of Gene, but I think this is a pretty powerful moment for Sally. And I do have to say, like, Antonio playing Gene, I thought was pretty great, down to his his little costume there. I really enjoyed that. And the idea that Sally has 3 ages and the 2 guys are named Mike and Michael was just chef's kiss right there.
Yeah, that's way up there. Some good lines here too. I mean, this was a really solid scene.
Oh yeah, I mean, just the idea that Barry has Gene like,
Did you say I have no nuts, or that I have no balls? We just want to make sure it's accurate.
that was a fun one right there. And then Gene just kind of calling Sally out on her bullshit, and he says,
So your burden is that you're booking work?
you can see kind of why maybe the acting class isn't as, high on Sally as they might have been at the beginning of the show. After that, Barry's got to do what he's got to do. We see him in a car at night, and he loads a clip with Hank's bullet into a gun and sneaks into the monastery where the Burmese mafia is headquarters. Barry finds Esther listening to headphones. With her back to him, he'll never have an easier shot. But Barry can't bring himself to pull the trigger. He hears voices approaching, so he ducks into a room. Unfortunately, it's the game room, and it's filled with Burmese henchmen. Barry exits the monastery as quickly as possible, but his car takes gunfire as he drives away. He crashes into a van and barely escapes on foot. You would talk about the good action scenes and everything, but when he walks into that room with a gun, like, is there any way he ever could have made it out of there without firing a shot? Like, that seems a little bit wild to me.
Yeah, it's kind of weird that they didn't just put a bullet in their own building.
Like, you think one of those dudes kind of would have had a gun somewhere. I mean, shout out, when you go into that room, it's basically like a fraternity house game room. I'm not joking. There's food right down to the foosball table and everything. It was almost like in the stash house. Remember, there's the same kind of thing when they go in the room with like be careful not to let the cats out or whatever.
Yeah.
And they walk in there and it's a bunch of, and they're basically chilling, but there are a couple guns you can see. And then Barry and Taylor just take them out. I mean, kind of similar here, but I guess, I don't know. It just it strike the right chord, really. Just the idea that nobody noticed Barry sneaking in. He's got multiple chances to take Esther out, and then like he goes right into where I don't know. I mean, maybe there's actually monks in there, but based on the dudes in the game room, I would say it's like 90% henchmen, 10% monks, or something like that.
Yeah. No way you or I or anyone else just makes it out of there alive.
Yeah, and even the fact that he made it in the front door, all right. So let's not really worry about that. In the final scene, Barry managed to creep home on foot, and he finds Fuchs, of all people, waiting for him. Fuchs explains that he's freaked out because the LAPD came to see him in Cleveland. He tells Barry that the cops asked him a bunch of questions, and he point blank asked Barry if he killed a cop. Barry doesn't respond. He just tells Fuchs that he has to leave, and he does not want to see him again. Barry goes home, and we see that Loach is surveilling the scene, and Fuchs is wired for sound. Fuchs assures Loach that he can get Barry if he gives him another shot. I don't know, man. Are you surprised that Fuchs basically went rat?
Yes and no. I think that Fuchs is, it kind of proves my theory from episode 1 here of season 2, that Fuchs was more upset about this than maybe we thought he was going to be. And the second thing here is I think Fuchs is just always working whatever option he has, whatever angle he has at his disposal to get out of trouble, no matter who it affects. I think he's willing to go there. So, little surprised by it, but not really.
I think that's fair enough. And I have to say, when Fuchs says, "It's not about you, it's about me," man, that might actually be the most honest, truthful thing that Fuchs has ever said. And shout out Loach here, he's working it, right? Like, he's doing all he can. Do you remember the first time you saw this? Did you think that Fuchs was just there because he was scared? Or did you have an inclination that maybe he turned?
I kind of thought that maybe I think I was just kind of leaning that he was just scared. That he was just trying to get out of it,
or any excuse to go back to Barry, right?
Any excuse to go back to Barry. And I also believe Fuchs is narcissistic enough to believe that he could win back Barry even after all this and be like, I had to do it for you, like he could get back, and double cross Loach and join back with Barry. I just got to believe that Loach, or that Fuchs believes that in himself.
Yeah, and was it Bill Simmons or someone they used to call it a irrational confidence guy, like in the NBA, who even if he wasn't that good, was perfectly willing to like jack up a shot from almost half court just because someone was giving him the room. Like, Fuchs seems like that guy, even if he's failed a bunch of times, he's just got that BDE, that irrational confidence, whatever it is.
And that is the end of our recap. But before we hand out our awards, let's see what other people thought about this episode. Over on IMDb, our friends have this rated 7.9, a rating of 7.9 on IMDb. That makes it the 5th lowest. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5th lowest out of 24 total episodes. Kind of a big deal here, man. What do you think, Mills? Is this one of the 5 worst episodes of Barry? Please remember, no spoilers, but answer that as best you can.
I think that's probably fair. Again, you say 7.9. That's right in your like B- range. I don't think there's ever been a bad episode of Barry, but if you're going to kind of put them all to this standard, I think it's probably in the ballpark. It's not a bad episode. It's just not one that's, essential or captivating or something like that. Again, it feels like it's a little bit choppy as far as the pacing. They spent all this time kind of going back and forth between trying to convince us that like Gene is both really sad but also really excited about this new play concept or whatever. So I would say 7.9. If that puts it in the the bottom 5 or so, I think that's probably about right. Any difference yourself?
No, I agree with that. Again, it sounds bad, but it's really not. Even if it was ranked the worst, that it sounds bad, but it's really not.
That is the subtitle on my Tinder profile. And, everyone works hard on their Tinder profile and everyone works hard on Barry. But even Bill Hader has admitted that they don't work that hard on episode titles. The Power of No, I think, is actually one of the better episode titles for Barry. But Jamie G, you consider yourself a better man. Can you do better than The Power of No?
Man,
Come on, give me one of your sheep fucker moments.
I want to go there too, but I got to go with it's not about you. It's about me, man. I really think that would be a good one. It's long and wordy, which Barry seems to love to do. I could see that being successful.
Yeah, I actually like that one a lot. Competitive grief sounds kind of fun. Massive fumble turnover. Yeah, I mean, that's just pure Hank. I think those are both good, but probably my favorite was just That's Not How Bullets Work, because even I think I know how bullets work, and I'm pretty sure that's not how bullets work.
That would be a great title, actually. And I also shout out to Gene's tapes. I got a lot of tapes would be good too.
It would make you curious as to what kind of tapes.
Yes, it would. What we're curious about, you're curious about, we know it, and now it's time to do it. We're going to hand out our awards for this episode. We'll start by each choosing our favorite quote or dialogue exchange from the episode. I'm up first here, Magnum Mills. I got to go with Gene with the sheep fucker moments. I just have to, dude.
The rest of you, you're gonna find your sheepfucker moments. And then we'll take them all, we will mold them into a show that we will do for a paying audience and the occasional VIP comp.
That's just fantastic. I'm all in.
And you know what? The Fuchs line about the foreign prostitutes is great, but I have to go with Gene, just the short exchange with Natalie about her, truth when he says,
All right, I know you were just a fetus, but is this close to your experience?
From what I remember, yes.
when I think of it, I just imagine the opening to Look Who's Talking. So that's pretty much what happens with that.
Yeah.
I mean, that's all I got from the, In Utero and the Nirvana album. Next up is our favorite moment or scene from The Power of No. It's my turn to go first here, and I am going to go with Loach's interrogation of Fuchs. I want to tie the prostitute story back in, and I think the exchange is great because Loach kind of looks good in this one, right? He knows Fuchs is bullshitting him, and Fuchs kind of knows that he has no option, so it's basically a game of chicken. And we see how it turns out, and Loach wins. So I really enjoyed that scene. Jamie G, your favorite scene or moment?
I'm going to go with the scene with the students. Look, man, big fan of the students in the theater class. I like them doing their acting shit. And dude, just shout out to Antonio's Gene costume. I mean, that's a win all day.
Yeah, you can never go wrong with the acting class.
And that brings us to our Greek Freak of Assassins, which is our MVP of this episode. I guess I'll go first here. Tougher than you think, but man, I'm going Loach. I think that Loach got the upper hand here. He's kind of hot on the trail. I give him a lot of credit, man. He gets kind of ball busting quite a bit, but the dude's delivering, man. He's getting closer.
Dude, like Mace's second album, we're going to double up here because you have to give Loach a chance here, right? This might be as good as it ever gets for him. I mean, he is in a world of trouble as far as his divorce, his business investments. He doesn't even have a real divider for his cubicle. This might be the biggest W he gets when he gets one over. He brings Fuchs in kind of as his informant. So 100%, I am there. Greek Freak of Assassins. Give me Detective Loach. And, we're not Giannis Antetokounmpo. We're not a Greek Freak. We're not even Chris Middleton, Drew Holiday, any of the Milwaukee Bucks. And we're not Rotten Tomatoes. We're no Roddy T's. But that doesn't matter. We still have to do our best to give a grade to The Power of No.
Because I'm the Fonz, huh? Hey!
And in honor of Henry Winkler, Gene Cousineau himself, we grade each episode of Barry on a scale of 1 to 10 Fonzies. Hey! And if you don't remember, that's because Henry Winkler played the Fonz on Happy Days, and he was literally the coolest motherfucker in the world. I am up first here. I'm going to go slightly down from the first episode of season 2, 7.8 A's. Still pretty good. Again, never been a bad episode of Barry, but I'm just kind of waiting around a little bit. Like, all right, kind of like get it all settled so we can like, get to the fireworks factory or whatever a little bit. So 7.8 Fonzies, Jamie G.
Right there with you. I am also going to give it 7.8 Fonzies, 7.8 A's. I think that's an appropriate scoring for this.
Yeah. We're doing the law of averages. We're pretty close. Actually, I think we're both under the IMDb a little bit, but I think that's, I think that's a fair grade. And here's your fair warning. We're entering the spoiler section. If you do not want to be spoiled on anything from future episodes, any news about Barry, anything of that nature, go ahead, check out now. Thank you for checking this out. Please make sure, remember, like, follow, subscribe, do that one thing. Appreciate it. Check back soon for our episode covering past equals present times future over yesterday, the very wordily titled third episode of season 2. For everybody else, here is our spoiler discussion for The Power of No, starting now.
Obviously the big one here, we get Leo, right? Jean's son. I think that look at the picture, I think that was the first like kind of acknowledgement, kind of like proof that Jean had a son, and you kind of see his initial relationship, and obviously we know where that goes. And they start to use Leo as kind of a chess piece in this show about Jean's kind of character arc. So I think that was kind of cool as first intro to Leo.
Yeah, and a little bit of the kind of relationship between Natalie and Sally, which has been all over the place. But here, just the idea that like Natalie like directly copies Sally when she touches Barry. You see her do some kind of stuff like that in season 3. And first time we meet Lindsay, who will eventually become like Sally's sole agent. I think that's at the end of season 2. Again, nice of bringing the tooth back around. And actually the scene when Fuchs is talking to Loesch about it reminded me a lot about the scene from the first episode of season 3 where Hank has to come in to be interrogated, and then he fingers Fuchs as the Raven. I really loved all of that here. And I think even Jean trying to reconcile with Leo reminded me a bit of Barry trying to reconcile with Jean in season 3. And then, when Sally finally starts talking about her truth and she swears that she will never be with another violent man again, the whole time the camera's just on Barry. And we definitely see that aspect pop up again in season 3.
No, I was going to say one last one here. Kind of just an interesting thing that comes back, but the Jean's note saying not to buy yellow flowers for Janice. Upcoming season 3, we see Barry, kind of struggling to figure out which colors to buy Sally. So kind of an interesting comeback. This show's been awesome about those type of callbacks for stuff like that. I think that's great.
Yeah, I mean, they've been right up there with Kim Kardashian as far as comebacks.
Kim Kardashian?
Well,
in the video she gets cum on her back, I think.
This is, something you can call a comeback. You can't though, because we've been
here for years.
That's a wrap on The Power of No. Anything else, buddy, before we head?
Next up is season 2, episode 3, past equals present times future over yesterday.
Apparently, I guess we're doing math next time on the Barry podcast. Thanks again for checking us out. We hope you enjoyed our show and that we added something to your Barry experience. Whether you guys are rewatching or checking out Barry for the first time, we're here for you. Please remember, go ahead, like, subscribe, comment. Do it now. Mills, anything else before we go?
I'm right here. Do it now. That was basically it. Barry Podcast, wherever you get your pods, at Barry Podcast on the social medias. Search for Barry Podcast on YouTube or find our YouTube channel at showblowfootballshow.com. Those are the basics, baby. Thanks again for checking us out. I'm Magnum Mills. He is Jamie G. And we are the co-presidents of the Mitch Fan Club. And we like to go out by bringing it in.
1,
2, 3. Cousineau.